Hey everyone, how you doing? I'm just reading this here. Letting the chat fill up a little bit. Full moon tonight? Remember this? Great. Full moon. People from New Zealand. We have a good following in New Zealand. We have a good following in Australia and in the UK and in Canada and in the Nordic countries. We have some people from Germany. I've seen people from Malaysia, Japan, Korea. A pretty good following. All right, guys. So we have a show tonight. Obviously, I'm here. My arm is still really messed up. My elbow. If people, please, if you're out there and you believe in the Abrahamic faith of Christianity, you can pray for me. Be greatly appreciated. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second here. Enid Kindley, Pam Willard Wittes, Mary Plyler, Jason Tyson, Helder Ortega, Deborah Patterson, Lauren Russo, Andrew, Gloria Smith, Stephen Bates, Peter Haralamos, Ricardo Ramirez, Spencer Rowley, Vicky Walker, Stephen Rivas, Michael Turner, Martin Hertel, Charles Hamill, Melissa, Taylor Alexandra Orick, Maynard W., Adam Jinks, Jim Kovach, Cassidy Lee, Kenny Irish, Josh and Kylie Herrera, Vulcan Death Grip, David Ullman, Christy, Shonda Hardinger, Brady Matsunaga, Sarili, Susan Woodcarver, David Vigil, Fat Squatch, Sonia Girding, Mimi Piccolelli, Polly G, Melissa Koyman, Pauline Rome, Stephen Hull, Miguel Guerra, Tim Lewis, Super Hornet 1, Debbie Wolf, Graydon McKee, Extreme Reality Check, James Estrada, Tim Renard, Ricardo Herrera, Titan, Dead Man Walking, Guy, Derek Tribble, Dick Richards, Joyce Brunette, Barbara Blendy, Martin Hertel, Terry Fiesler, Cluffy Source, Rex, Curtis Turner, Alexander Murphy, and Matthew Durgo. So those are our Patreon members. Yep. Let me get started with a little bit of news. So I wasn't here last week. Let me just get that out of the way real quick. I wasn't here last week. I had hurt my elbow. Turns out I had gout. Okay, I've had gout one other time in my entire life, and that was in my big toe, which lasted a few days, and it was gone. I was like, what is this? And the doctor was like, it looks like you have gout, and it was over with. Excruciating pain. Here's the weird thing. I don't eat or drink many things that contribute to gout. I don't drink alcohol very much at all, and I haven't much of as of late. I don't eat. I'm not big on, like, they said organ meat's one of the things that causes. I don't eat organ meat. I do not. And I don't eat lunch meat. I don't eat very much cheese or dairy. Other than salmon and tuna, I can't really figure out what would be. I don't eat a lot of red meat either. So I'm sitting here going like, what in the heck, how am I getting gout? So I did some research and I found out that a lot of people who've had COVID, especially that last variant, ended up getting gout. And I know one guy who's had it 6 times. Good gnats. Good gosh, man. But here in Austin, let me tell you something. It's like the plagues of Egypt, dude. There's flea infestations everywhere. They're all over the building now. I mean, like, you walk in, like, when you first get to the door, you're about to get in the door, there's fleas in the front area up there. We don't even know how they got there. Our pets don't have them. When they're at the house, they're not jumping on us. We don't have any kind of anything. But a lot of the places where we work at, the apartments, they have bed bugs. And there's people complaining about gnats. Yesterday when I was working on getting the shirts and stuff printed up, there was like a bunch of gnats and flies in the place. And the guy was like, dude, I don't know what's going on. They're everywhere. It is so Yeah, it's like Austin is being plagued by, it's crazy. Everywhere you go, there's roaches. And, I'm like walking through the shopping mall, look down, there's a roach. And you're like, dude, what is going on here? Mosquitoes the size of my pinky tip, and you're just like, they're everywhere. They're just mosquitoes everywhere. There's roaches everywhere. There's bed bugs. There's I don't know about lice, but fleas. Gnats. There's these little red cherry looking things, and you go in the stores, and everywhere in the stores, everybody's store has them in there. Flies everywhere. I mean, it's like, what? This is, this damnable heat. 110 degrees, 109 yesterday. I mean, is this crazy? Is something wrong with my audio? Can you guys hear me? Tell me if you can hear me. Invasion of the insects. Yes, indeed it is. It's crazy. We don't know. And I've talked to so many people, that I'm friends with, and they're having, like, not all of the above, but they're having one or two of the above. And nobody can really tell you why. And so now I got this pain in my elbow. It was so excruciating I could barely move it. Now I can move it. I can do this. You can still see how it sticks out right there. I have range of motion. I can't work out yet. I haven't lifted in 2 weeks. That's been a nightmare. And it's very hard for somebody who's always stressed out. You need to be able to work out. You need to be able to do something. And I'm not able to. I'm just here. Oh yeah, Dorothy Metcalf, the crickets. Yeah, some of the parking lots we've been in. You walk through and there's crickets everywhere. You're just crunching on them. I don't know what's going on. I mean, there's all kinds of theories. But we know one's for sure. I've lived in Austin since 1991. I haven't seen 1990, I guess. I haven't seen anything like this in all the years I've been here. This many bugs. So, folks, let me. That was the list I read. Let me just make sure everybody understands what I just did. That was the Patreon supporters. Eventbrite is where you go to get the tickets for the conference. We are doing really well with the sales. I'm surprised at how many we've sold. For those who wanted this conference to be a failure, you're going to be disappointed because it's pretty good. So we have a lot of speakers that are going to be there. It's going to be a great time. The 12th, if you're a VIP member, and then the 13th, if you're not. And so I was busy getting set up to bring supplies for the conference yesterday, and I made some hats that I think everybody's going to be really cool. I'm going to try and show them on the show the week before we go. These hats you will not be able to get anywhere but the conference. So if we sell out at the conference, we sell out. But yeah, that's it. So they're really cool. They're special hats made specifically for the concert. They have like a really cool design on them, and then they have the leather patch on them. So yeah, they're gonna be really cool. Don't forget to join Paranormal Round Table group, because this link to this show, like all shows, will be dropped on the Paranormal Round Table group. And you can go and leave a comment and possibly win a prize. Let me get started. I'm going to start off with a story here. For those of you who come in late, well, you know what? You're just missing out. I got a really creepy story out of Killeen. And I've gotten plenty of stories out of Killeen. Killeen's a weird, creepy place. But this lady worked for a friend of mine. And I was reading this the other day, and I thought, this is a good one. And it's pretty... it kind of goes along the lines of what we talked about, I think it was the week before last, when we were talking about this troll-looking creature that was living in this apartment that was being renovated, being built when this apartment complex was being built over there in Dallas, Fort Worth area. It's kind of like that. But this was right outside of the military base. Her and her husband were in the military back in 2014, and then they ended up getting out, and then they got a place or whatever, or they were living there, So they finished their lease, and by 2015 they were gone. They left. The rent wasn't real expensive. They had a child. One of the things that was going on was like there was obviously some paranormal stuff going on. There was like some sort of haunting that was happening there. There was like weird phone calls in the middle of the night. They'd get like these weird phone calls, and there would just be static, and then they'd hear like somebody with a raspy voice trying to talk. But ultimately, one thing happened in particular. It was around Christmas time, and they came home at night, and all of their Christmas lights had been pulled down, and everything that was, they had these little reindeer thingies kind of up on the roof. It had been pulled down. Stuff was scattered about the yard, and they thought, oh, this is vandalism, that's, you see this, like obviously this person hates Christmas, they got their ass whooped by a Christmas tree as a kid or something, so they hate Christmas, or they're just one of those selfish, stingy people that don't like to have to buy gifts. That's most people that don't want to like Christmas. So they come home and there's a big mess. Well, the next night they come home, and they had gone to get a pizza or something, I think he said. And they look up on the roof, and they see this thing skittering across the roof, which looked like a small person walking on all fours. Now, this house did have an attic, and sometimes they would hear noises, and they would think, what in the heck, what is that? Like a really large raccoon? Sometimes it sounded like somebody jumping around in the different rooms. They wouldn't see anybody. Now, if you remember the other story I told, it was very similar. It was almost like this thing, it was physical, and you could see it, but then it would also like not be physical. Like sometimes you couldn't see it. And I don't believe that it would disappear. I believe that you just couldn't see it. I think it was always there. That's my opinion of this creature or entity, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that it didn't go anywhere. I think it's just there. Now you see me, now you don't. So his wife, that's the person I originally talked to, the female, she was like, didn't want to say anything. They had their kid with them, the 4-year-old. And she was like, look, I know what I saw. They're talking about it. And he's like, yeah, I did too. He goes up there, he gets a ladder, goes up on the roof. It's not a real big house. They don't see anything. He goes back down. He goes inside. And there are what looks like wet footprints on the ground that look sort of human-like, but really diminutive, but then there's little claws on them. And the way he described it was where your big toe would be, it's like jutting out this way. Like if this was your left toe, it'd be kind of like, the left foot, I mean. So obviously there was something weird going on. And then one day they had like a little garage carport thingy, whatever, and he would go in there, and he had a car that he was working on. And as he was under the car one day, he looks and he sees a pair of legs just walking, but they were blackish green. He could see it. He was like, whoa. And he said the light was on outside on the carport. It was dark, but there was a big light, and he could see it was like this greenish, blackish colored legs that looked weird. Like the feet looked weird, and they were small, and he was like, what in the heck is that? He sees that, and it goes into the carport, and he's like, it's like a garage is detached, I guess, from the house, put that way. And it's like a port, like a covered port that goes. Anyway, thing walks in, and he hears like a like something fell, so he crawls out from under it real quick, and he looks. He shines his light. He doesn't see it. He has one of the hooded lights on a light on his whatever. He walks into the garage area or carport area, whatever. Doesn't see anything, looks around. The light doesn't work. Electricity went out for some reason. Then you wonder about that. Did this entity or creature make the light go out? So he goes inside the house and he's like, man, I've been working too long on something, you know. But he can't help but remember going, you know, we saw this thing on the roof a couple months back, you know, whatever. And he said that it wasn't like an everyday occurrence. And I understand that because I lived in a house that had a lot of weird stuff happen, but it was not an everyday occurrence. That's one thing that you could always, you know, bank on, was that it would run in spurts. Same thing was happening here. There would be times where things would be happening. One day he got up to go to the kitchen. He turns and he said his kitchen, you could see down the hallway, and he sees this thing go like across the hallway real quick, and he was like, whoa, did I just see that? Eventually, he was home alone. His wife had gone out of town. She had gone to visit her family in I think she said Gatesville. And so he was inside the bathroom, and he was home alone, and he heard something scratching at the door. Now, they do have a dog. Dog is outside in the backyard. It's not an inside dog. They had a cat. Cat was declawed. He starts to wonder if there's something there on the other side of the door. He said at this point his mind, you know, his imagination's running away with him. He's like, dude, I'm thinking there's something there. He had been seeing things in the corner of his eye. His wife, same thing. The child was still really young, and oddly, the child seemed to be unaffected. There was no reports from the child saying, yes, I had something coming into my room and was touching my feet. Nothing like that. There was nothing from the child in this particular case. But he opens the door, and he sees this thing standing there, just looking right at him, like it was right in the hallway. And he said the skin looked wet, like it had just crawled out of some water or something. He said it was the weirdest looking thing, and it had this weird, like, no nose, just kind of a weird looking, like where the nose would have been, just kind of like a snout that came down into like almost like a muzzle with a turtle looking face. He described it kind of like as a turtle outside of a shell. And he said it was just sitting there staring at him. And so he freaks out, he screams, he falls backwards, and this thing just turns and moves and takes off towards the kitchen area. He comes out and he looks both ways. He doesn't see it, and he runs, and of course he's armed. He grabs a weapon and he begins to walk around the house in a towel. Doesn't see anything. He does hear the back door open and close. I mean, he said he looked this thing dead on. It had like yellow, like you could see the whites of his eyes like human eyes, but they looked reptilian. And he said but they were like bloodshot, like red. And he said it was just a very, just gave a full description of it. Had like this raggedy looking, either skin hanging off of it or like a shirt. And he said it looked like just like a little troll. And so he was like, time to leave. Time to move. And so they did. His wife had an encounter with it one time. She thought she heard a thud, and she looks and sees something drop. Like she didn't see it drop, but she said something had dropped. And she said that it was walking, like kind of low crawling, but like hunched over in the hallway, and she just saw it disappear by the kitchen, and then there once again, back door open. Where it would have fallen from the ceiling, she said there's no place where that would have been. Like it could have, it would have had to have gone through the material. So that's a very weird story. I don't know what you can take it, and I didn't know if I wanted to put that with a little people story, because I don't know if that's little people so much as just some sort of goblin. I'd say a goblin. You know, like when I described it, I said, what would you call it? You know, what words would best fit? He said troll, goblin, you know. Yeah. So that's a pretty creepy story. I just thought, you know, that's... But I wanted to share something with you. We are going to have somebody, it's going to come on in 30 minutes, and we're going to have a talk with them. And we're going to talk about some pretty cool stuff. But I wanted to share something with you guys. You, the paratroopers, you're my fans, and you know how things are. And people always tell me, well, you shouldn't give these people the time of day because you're just making them famous and all this other bull crap, whatever. Like I'm so famous, I'm going to make you famous. Yeah, whatever. So anyways, I posted the link to the Paranormal Round Table group. Who is this? Fan, thank you for that donation so much. It's $10. Appreciate it. Right now, honestly, folks, we need it because I am going to be about several $1,000s in the hole from this conference, and so I could use all the help I can get right now. I'm just kind of like going like we need to get this going here with the conference because it is not a cheap undertaking, and to bring all these people together. You know, even though 90% of the people that are showing up, I never even discussed money with them at all. But I am going to have to give them something. They're taking their time out, and not only am I paying for the food and the lodging, you got to give them something. You can't just say, hey, thanks for coming to my conference. So if we ever try to do it again, or if we do it next year, they're going to be like, hey, man, I'm not working for free. You know? But most people have been very gracious and been very forthcoming. So, anyways, I posted this in the Paranormal Round Table group. I was trying to promote it. We now have 8,000 members. We hit 8,000 members finally, even though we approved 336 people last month. Okay, follow me here. 336 people you added, and you were already at 7.8. Doesn't sound right, does it? But anyway, Facebook finally decided to let us be at 8,000. So we have an 8,000 member group. Yay. Michelle Burns, thank you for always being a supporter of the show. Thank you for that $10 donation. I appreciate it, because that's definitely anything you give me today, that's going toward that conference. So this guy, his name is Gray Wolf. Got a profile picture of a wolf. Gray Wolf, I'm going to call you out because he says, I don't know, this guy is sort of a clown, he doesn't even put a punctuation, he just says, focuses his entire worldview off Abrahamic religion and lacks an open mind in that regard. Good reports, but his views are pushed fairly hard into most areas. Dogmen are not demons. Okay, there's so many things wrong with this, and this is the problem with people. Now, first of all, the name. We'll go to Gray Wolf. Gray Wolf, do you work for law enforcement? That's my first question, because you act like the police over here. Like you had to say something like, I'm going to tell you how it is, this guy. I bet you were a hall monitor as a kid. It's probably what it was. Were you the kid that stayed behind and beat the erasers and did whatever the teacher told them? I was never that kid. I hated those kids. You were like little adults. I was busy trying to be a kid. I was playing with Transformers and riding my bike through the trails. Playing baseball and trading baseball cards and little pee-wee football, whatever. You were, on the other hand, were probably one of those kids that was, and I understand there's a type of people that are very, very intelligent, and they're the ones that run our world. You know, and a lot of these people are very smart. And I am appreciative of very intelligent people, and I think that intelligence has a very strong place in our society, but some people think that because they're diminutive and they're weak physically, that I have my brain will get me through everything and blah, blah, blah. Yes and no. Like, you can use your brain to go and build your body because you're smart and you figured out by just simply looking at your body with common sense and said, I don't want to look like inflatable arm flailing tube man. I want to go and actually work out and look decent. So what ends up happening is people, they just say, well, I'm super smart, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be smart. I'm going to focus on that. I'm not like these dumb jocks who don't do nothing. Let me tell you something. Have you ever played football? Have you ever done 2-a-days? It's hard. It ain't easy. Yeah, I always thought how they were like, yeah, these guys are showing, whatever. But I guess I was one of the jocks that played Dungeons and Dragons in the lunchroom. So I mean, in the library. So I guess I was a kind of a hybrid. I had a bunch of friends who were considered nerds. You're just smart. I tried to encourage them to do physical things. Not happening. And by the same token, I encouraged some of my friends who only wanted to lift weights and chase girls and whatever to read a book. Same thing. I'm not doing that. It's dumb. I'm going to do this. I'm dumb. And blah, blah, blah. And they stayed that way. You see them years later and they're a cashier at the Exxon. And you know why. Grace W., thank you for that donation. Liberty, thank you for that donation. Support the conference. Yes, please do. Thank you so much, because we could definitely use it right now. So I'm not saying that Grey Wolf is that. Grey Wolf could also be me from the future, because I'm Wolf, and it could be Gray Wolf, like when my beard and hair just all turns gray. So it could just be me from the future mocking my past self, like, this guy, he was so stupid when I was him. He believed in the Abrahamic faith. And that's why, what does that even mean? Worldview off Abrahamic religion. When I have been criticized for talking about Buddhism and Hinduism and all these other religions, I've been accused of being a New Ager. That guy, I don't know about him. He's in the New Age stuff. He's wacky. He's talking about the Bible's not all correct. He's trying to rewrite the Bible. Get a rope. Burn him at the stake. I had somebody the other day, I guess it was it 2 weeks ago, he called me amazing dumb. So I'm going to get a shirt made. If anybody wants to help out, send me your submissions for a gecko shooting the finger, and it's going to say, I am amazing dumb. Because he told me last week or a week before, I was amazing dumb. I will admit to the first part of that, but not the second part. Titan, thank you. So it's a little for that Conference Gate Part 1 with old text. Thanks for all you do, Josh. Blessings on you. Thank you, Titan. And that's really cool, man. Thanks for all you do and blessings on you, man. Thank you. Bless you. Let me tell you something, Titan. You always help too. That the next part with text coming up this Friday is going to be really good. It's going to be a lot about Dogman. So the first part I think was mostly Bigfoot. So we're going to talk about some Dogman. We're going to get some stuff going here. Are y'all leaving? These people showed up, made a delivery, and decided to leave. Okay. But anyways, yeah, he says dogmen are not demons. I don't know what they are, dude. They could be demons. They could be, from the inner earth. Who knows? Anunnaki pets, But yeah, he made sure to let you know they're not demons. Did I say they were 100% demons? They tend to act more like demons than anything else. In fact, old Dick over there said that he wanted to make sure that people understood that they were not mindless killing machines and that they're not bad. And you can basically go and use one as a service animal to go to Walmart. So, Victim Cramlips decided to have a ridiculously stupid person, if it is who I think it is. I call it Little Red Riding Hood. She's the one with the fake Dogman conference who couldn't even get 100 people, who tries to take credit for Linda Godfrey's work. Her name rhymes with Donnelly Wells Pink. Stop talking crap before your feelings get hurt. Okay? I'm taking holy water with me to the conference. In case I have to throw it on somebody. What a wear. Might see that, folks. We're all having our conference and you hear boom, and then here comes a woman on a broom. I'm here to ruin your conference. Dogman Whisperer jumps off the back. And me too. I'm here to express my views. These creatures are just animals. And they don't hurt nobody. I'll get you, Wolfie, and your little show, too. And then the man behind the curtain. Hey, everybody, I'm your therapist. I'm the therapist, the dog man therapist. I'm behind the curtain. Listen to my show. Listen to people tell their encounters very badly on my show. To the point where you want to roll over and die. So, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Gray, or I don't know what you prefer. I'm just going to call you Gray. I think we're on a first name basis with your trolling. He says here, good reports. So, thank you. That's a feather in my cap. He says, but his views are pushed fairly hard into most areas. Okay. And I guess that's stemming from the Abrahamic faith views. The way he words it, it's like it's some great mystery what my religion is. It's like, he's like, well, let's see, you know, he's obviously not Jewish, you know. I live in Texas, dude, okay? I've said many times, it's like you know I'm considered to be a Christian, although my faith is I follow Christ, not necessarily in the Christian sense because I don't follow the church. The church has been compromised. Randy Collins, thank you for that. So he says that Abrahamic religion. So I guess he's trying to say that, you know, he knows that Christianity is one of the Abrahamic religions. So there's two things he's doing. He's trying to make it out like, hey man, I'm really smart. I'm well read. I'm a man of the world. I know what this is. And then he's also slamming me for being one of them. I think that there is truth in a lot of different religions, Mr. Gray, Wolf, whatever. Hope I'm not talking to my future self. That would be really weird. Look out, beware for Skynet. But yeah, he just, you know, it reminds me of one of those kids, dude. Like, you know, this the hall monitor, dude. Like, you know, you're the kid who, you know. And by the way, we're on the subject of school. Enough about Mr. Gray, Wolf. Is it just me, or are kids going back to school earlier and earlier? Now I heard some people say that they're not going to be able to go to the conference because the 12th and the 13th is back to school weekend. And I'm going like, what? Now I'm old enough when I was a kid that back to school was Labor Day. You got out Memorial Weekend and you went back Labor Day after Labor Day weekend. And I hated Labor Day weekend because it was like, oh, back to school. I think my last year or two in high school was when we actually went back like a week before Labor Day was when we first started doing that. And I thought, this really sucks. It was like, or it was a few days before, and then you had Labor Day weekend, which was a long weekend, which was weird. It didn't make any sense. And then you went back on like Tuesday. But school had only been in for a few days or something. It was weird. And I thought that was odd. But then, as I raised, you know, 3 boys, I started noticing that every year they went back to school earlier and earlier. It was so weird. I was like, you know, and most people aren't going to complain about that because free babysitter. These kids are getting out at the end of the first week of June here now, and they're going back not even the second week of August. What happened to summer? It's still hot as hell. I mean, it's summer out there, believe me. The trees are on fire. But they're back in school. And then the first football game is being played in 110-degree weather, and you're going like, what in the heck is going on here? And the parents, you are falling into a trap because that is giving your kids more time with the state and less time with you. That's what it is. That's what this is all about. Because they get more indoctrination and just kind of letting it happen. Parents are like, oh, I'm glad that they're going back to school. I don't have to deal with them. So you're giving the state an extra, basically 3 weeks, 3 or 4, to you know, to have with your kids. That's less time you have with your kids. But the average mom and dad is like, hey, this is okay. I'm okay with this. And because it's so expensive to have for childcare, it's super expensive, and you got to have 2 incomes to survive now. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to let my kid go and be, like there's a programming. Exactly. And the stuff that my nephews, my godson, were coming home and telling me, they're like, I learned this, and that, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? They were teaching them things in the English class about history, fake history. And I'm going like, okay. But I had to go up to the school a couple times, and I had to tell the English teacher, look, what subject do you teach? She's like, English. I said, okay, well, why don't you teach English and stop giving your pseudo-history opinions on things? I had to have that talk with her and the guidance counselor and the principal. And it was very cut and dry. Teach English. If you're a math teacher, teach math. I don't need your opinions being spouted into my children's heads. Because you went to college and you were indoctrinated because you weren't strong enough to see through it. See, some of us can go to school and still figure it out, but others are just like, oh, really? That's what's going on. So if you think this is a good thing that kids are going back earlier and earlier, there's always some sort of reasoning behind it, and it's never good. It's always nefarious, dude. These people who are running things don't have your best interest at heart. Wish you people would wake up. And if you're on one side now, there's one side that's kind of gotten to where the politicians are leaning their way, and they think the government's great. But you weren't thinking that back when old fool can't fool me again. That when he was in there, everybody was complaining. Now it's your way, and you're all like, oh, it's great. Government's great. Do whatever government says. Well, they're doing experiments on children. Well, children are small, and they need to be experimented on. Government knows what it's doing. Just let them do it, huh? Well, they want to take your parents. Well, they've lived a long life. Any excuse. They will come up with anything. Anything. They will excuse everything. And somebody was trying to proselytize me the other day and telling me how that this guy is not so bad. Economies. I was like, don't talk to me. Don't. If you can't look at this depression we're headed for, and literally tell me that things are fine, you are the dumbest. You have to be the most idiotic human being on this planet, and you have to have your head so far up your own butt. You're never going to pull it out. Because you can't look around and see what's happening. Are you that stupid? But yeah, these people are really amazing dumb. I don't even remember what the guy's name was that said that, but I appreciate you. So I mailed off 3 things yesterday, and I want to make sure that I think I missed somebody because my what do you call it? The messenger thing. It didn't work right. It jumped and it cut a bunch of people's stuff down just to the last 2 months or month, whatever. Or I guess a month. So I mailed off Kyle French, Connie Cohen, and Renee Martineau. So if your name wasn't mentioned and you were sent a message saying you were going to get something, please send me a message. Okay, once again, that's Renee, Connie, and Kyle. Those aren't your names. Then message me because those are the people that won recently, and they got sent stuff. I want to make sure you get your stuff. Okay, so if I thought there was another one and I can't find it. If we message back and forth either through email or messenger, hit me up. Let me know. Hey man, you told me you were going to give me something, and so I can do this. I mean, I understand school. To me, school sucked. I didn't like it. I mean, I went through bullying when I was like, I guess in middle school and elementary. Not really so much, or as I got older, but it was just like, I mean, that wasn't, I didn't like, oh, I'm not going to go to school because I'm getting bullied. Everybody got bullied. Who cares? It was just like, I didn't want to go to school because it was tedious and boring. I was one of those kids that finished their work and then I just sit there bored, and You can't talk, you can't do nothing. So you're just bored. You're just sitting there doing nothing. And you can't put your head down and go to sleep because then they get onto you. So I was quite bored in public school. I tell you another thing. Art is another thing. Like it's an artistic expression. Seems like it's something that's now, even that has to be regulated. The only thing I hated about art class was, do y'all remember Play-Doh? Everybody knows what Play-Doh is, right? You had Play-Doh. Everybody has Play-Doh. Tell me if you know what Play-Doh is. Obviously, if you don't know, I mean, if you don't know, tell me right here so I can explain it to you and then tell you how stupid you are. Look, they had these clay sticks. When you got they would give you, sometimes they'd give you the package and it'd be like, several colors of these tube strips of clay. And I never understood it. It says on there, like, sculpting clay. Nowhere on there does it say Play-Doh. But they would say, that it's Play-Doh. And I guess that was because our school was being cheap and they didn't want to spring for the Play-Doh. So they just bought, like, the clay stick thingies in bulk or something. So anyways, we had this Play-Doh, which is not really what it was. But I guess for kids, it was more palatable to call it that. And we would play with it, and I'm telling you right now, dude, I mean, like, I had, like, my hands and wrists and forearms were sore. It was a workout, dude. You're sitting there going like, ugh. You're trying to make something. So I remember me and another kid had a project, so we chose Gumby. And we had just seen a Gumby cartoon or something, so we're like, let's do Gumby. So we tried to use sculpting clay to make Gumby and Pokey. We made the horse. The horse came out pretty good. And this is a true story. I'm not making this up. The kid's name was Clay, the kid that I was doing the project with. I think it was Clay Deach. And Clay, if you're out there listening, he's from Taylor or whatever. It was in like this after-school program. And the teacher was like, just not wanting to deal with it. So she's like, here, just do this. It was like, and so she kept saying his name and he wasn't answering because it was like she was over there saying Clay. So we thought she was talking about what we were talking. So she came over to my table and I didn't know what she wanted. So I presented her with Pokey, the horse of Gumby, right? And so she smacks it. I'm not making this like I went like that because I didn't know what she wanted. So she smacked it down, and I mean, it didn't go flying across the room in some dramatic. It just fell, and I was in shock. I think I was like in sixth. I think I was in 6th or 7th grade or something. I was in middle school. Like I think I was 6th grade, like the younger middle schooler. And I was like, "What the heck did I do?" Well, then she apologized afterwards. She's like, "I'm calling you." And I was like, okay, well, we weren't real sure. And we had taken a book. I think it was like in one of the bigger dictionaries or encyclopedias, whatever. And we were beating, like, we put a piece of paper in and we were beating the clay to get it to loosen up. And I think that's what she was mad about. So she was yelling at him to stop. Well, he was doing it. And so, anyways, when you're saying the person's name and they're named after the thing that you're using, it might get kind of confusing. So I ended up getting Pokey slapped out of my hand. Long story short, it turned out okay. She ended up giving me like a cookie and some chocolate milk afterwards and was nice. And I told her I wasn't going to tell on her. I blackmailed her though. I was like, I'm not going to tell on you, but I'm going to need a little something for my lunch tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding. I didn't blackmail anybody at that age. But, I just thought it was, I'd never liked that stuff. It was like, Play-Doh was great. It was just like, but clay, you're like, I'm 6 years old. I'm not a bodybuilder, Play with these clay sticks. Build your forearms. Look like Popeye. Come on, kids. Hey, whatever. Bunch of bull crap. So anyway, it's time. I'm going to call my friend here. And give me your comments on what you think about that weird story. What do you think it was? Little 2.5 foot tall, little duende looking creature, but a little different, So anyway, yeah. Anyways, enough of Grey Wolf, the hall monitor. Whoever thought that was a great idea in the first place, to put kids in charge of other kids? Besides the Khmer Rouge, I'm saying, like, you know, if you know, I'm not making light of what happened either. Those kids were killing some people, dude. They were like children of the corn on some major steroids, growth hormone. They were horrible. But you don't, the people that wanted to be hall monitors, I never understood them. Where's your hall pass? You know, you better get your hall pass. Whatever. It's ridiculous. Never understand those people. But there were always those kind of people. They wanted to suck up to the teacher, and they wanted to be the, you know. We had this one kid. I'm not gonna say it because he died not too long ago. He had cancer. I mean, he didn't die as a kid. I mean, he died. He was in his. I think he was only about 40. So it was several years ago. He passed away. He was a year younger than me, I think. And I remember going out to the hallway. His brother was my friend, so I kind of knew him. And the kid came running after me for my hall pass, and was like, then he wrote me up. They could give you like a pink demerit thing, and then you take it back to the teacher, and then the teacher, you explain to the teacher, they decide whether you go to the principal's office or not. And I did, and I ended up in like detention or something because I didn't have my hall pass, because I walked outside and I dropped it. I was like 11 years old or something. I wasn't paying attention. But that kid, man, he grew up to be one of the worst, like, criminals, dude. I'm not saying being a hall pass created and turning him into a criminal, but he was just one of those people who wanted to be in control. Seems like it kind of, that's the kind of people that want to do it. I never once accepted the hall pass. They're like, hey, you want to be a hall monitor? No. Why not? Because I'm not a snitch. I'm going to sit there and play with his bullcrap. Yeah, Titan says they grew up to scream at people to wear their masks. And it's like the guy that was talking crap to my wife in the line. Wait, you're not wearing a mask, you bitch. He's like cussing at my wife. I'm like, really, dude? Crazy. She's like 10 feet away from the guy. All right, so we're going to make a phone call here, folks.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Ron?
Not too much, man. Not too much.
You doing good?
I'm doing well, yes, sir. Are we doing video for this?
No. You're just going to talk.
Oh, this is perfect. Excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
you don't even have to put on pants. You can just, you're just, put on a shirt or anything. Just sit there and chill in your recliner. So,
very cool.
Yeah, so Ron, this is Ronald Murphy. If anybody doesn't know, Ron has done a lot of good work with Bigfoot and cryptids and just in general. And I was on a show with him on Lon Strickler's show not too long ago, and we got to know each other. And I had already heard of him, but hadn't worked with him before, and I had wanted to work with him, and so I was glad to get to work with him. And Ron is going to be at the conference next month, and you're going to be doing a presentation. What is your presentation going to be?
Well, I'm going to be looking at the Dogman, the idea of the werewolf shapeshifter, through early Native American mound building cultures that existed throughout the Ohio River Valley, and some that were extremely close. Also to where we'll be having our presentation at the Land Between the Lakes, very near there.
Yeah. And because I know our friend Bart Nunley has done work on that too, and just, not to the, I doubt to the extent that what you're doing, but he has done a lot of, like in his book Mysterious Kentucky, he talks about the early inhabitants of the land between the lakes, and in Kentucky in general, because land between the lakes encompasses Kentucky and Tennessee. But when you talk about the mound building cultures, are you referring to like Cahokia?
Right. So that's a great question. So, as an anthropologist, we can kind of divvy up these particular time frames. So you would have what was coming out of the woodland Indian culture. So you would have three basically headlining cultures. So you would have the Adena culture, the very, very early one. You would have the Hopewellian culture, and then you would have the Mississippian culture. Now, this is the famous Cahokian culture, and this was the pinnacle of the mound building cultures, and it probably lasted right around 1500. So the ones that we're going to be looking at is the very, very early ones, because I will tell you, we are in this to gather data. We're here to, prove something out there that is very fringe related, right? I mean, it would be great that a mainstream science and academia would be picking up on this stuff, but right now it falls upon us. And if we're going to do a good job at this, we have to present this in a very logical, educated, and in a way that we can speak to a whole different facet of people. So that being said, as a researcher, what I would like to do is prove that this stuff just doesn't come out of nowhere. History does not form in a vacuum. We have to have some sort of genesis for these types of tells and encounters. And what's so fascinating is, my friend, is that we can go back to these very, very early formative cultures, these very, what we would call primitive cultures, and see that the idea, that at least the nuance of the Dogman existed in these cultures as well. And from an investigative point of view, that really sheds a lot of light on this mystery. Were people, 3,000-4,000 years ago experiencing the same thing in the same area that we are today?
And the answer to that is no, they were not. No, they were actually free of any kind of problems. It was basically the Smurf village. The only problem they had was Gargamel. He would come out and then, I'm going to get you, and Azrael, and then they would defeat them, and then he'd run away, and everybody just ate berries. No, seriously, I believe that like, I did a show with Linda Godfrey, and we got into it about the idea that the Aztecs, because she believed that the Aztecs had come down from the north, like they had come across, and then they had gone down, and they just slowly made their way. And there are artifacts that can be found all the way from like Wisconsin all the way down to Texas into Mexico. And they were a wandering tribe who had a belief and a story that eventually they would build their city when they found an eagle eating a snake. It was a very specific thing, and of course there's an eagle eating a snake on the flag of Mexico. It's like on a cactus or something. But it's crazy when you start to think about these different cultures, because Wisconsin has mounds. And so there's and then Illinois, of course, everybody knows Illinois has them. I know that in Ohio there's all these different mounds, all these different places. And I really believe that they had like a common heritage or a common ancestry. And I think that the Aztecs were somewhere were from that. I really believe that. And even the Comanches, I'm part Comanche, the Comanches, they ended up in Texas. They came down through like Utah, and there's like evidence that they were the same people that came down until they encountered the horses that had been left for a few hundred years by the Spaniards. And then, of course, they became horse people, and the rest is history. But the Aztecs, I believe, they just kept coming down, and then they ended up, because I think a lot of the natives that ended up in Central and South America, they didn't necessarily come across the land bridge. There were several migrations that came from all over, and some were Polynesian and some were Far East Asian. And I think that a lot of them, like I really believe that the Chilean, the Incans, I believe that they may have come over, across. They may have come from somewhere, like in that's how they got here, like from Polynesia. But the the Indians, the natives that came down, from Wisconsin, it would make sense because they found artifacts of these little dog-headed looking, sculptures and all kinds of different sculptures and things that correspond with the Aztec culture and the god Xolotl. And they had gods for everything. And I know that there were artifacts that looked very similar to Aztec artifacts that were found in the mounds in Wisconsin. And so we did kind of, I believe in that episode, we did touch on that, me and her, and we've talked about it before, that she believed that there was some connection to these dogmen and being in graveyards.
Absolutely. I think that is really what we're getting at. And not only are we getting at this from just a North American or maybe a Mesoamerican culture, if we are going to take the Aztecs into account, but we have to look at this on a worldwide culture. The idea that these creatures have always been associated with the realm of the dead, it goes back until ancient Egypt. And I'm talking about Old Kingdom Egypt. I'm talking about before the pyramids were constructed. So if the pyramids were constructed in about 3200 BC, we're going back at least to 5000 BC with at least the idea, the oral tradition of Anubis. And it's a funerary god. It is the amalgamation of man and a wolf. And so we do have this from the very beginning. And that's, from a researcher point of view, we are spanning continents, we're spanning time and space, and yet we still have this familiarity with these dogman creatures that are associated with funerary practices from around the world.
Yeah. And when you talk about the pre-pyramid Egyptian civilization, I don't know exactly how many years before the pyramids were built the Egyptian culture flourished, but I tend to believe it was at least 5,000 years.
Yeah, I would think so as well too. Yeah, we pick them up. See, this is the way the Western mind works. We don't associate certain cultures with any kind of heritage until we kind of lay them out and we kind of deem them worthy of study. And that's the same way whenever it comes to cryptids. Mainstream science will never appreciate nor validate these kind of things unless they're laying down on a table and they're being dissected. But the idea that there is a world of history out there that is unknown is very exciting to me from an educational point of view. There are cultures out there that we cannot even dream of had existed, and there is knowledge out there that has been forgotten. We, as a human race, as a collective human race, we have probably forgotten more than we have, that we have learned, which is amazing to me. The idea of where we come from is always fascinating me. The way ideas travel, the way language forms. And I would love to be able to see conferences on this. Now, you and I, we're having a very intelligent conversation here. We're not talking about ancient aliens or anything. We're talking about the idea of what the human imagination is capable of doing. That is extremely worthy of study. But again, we are also, in the world of cryptid research as well, and in the world of paranormal. So what we keep on uncovering as we go deeper and deeper down these rabbit holes are mysteries and are, evidence that we really don't know what to do with. So we're still kind of going through the process of trying to categorize and try to make sense of some of this very ancient evidence that's presented to us.
And I like that you're on that, because at the conference, folks, Ron's going to go into more detail about all this. You're getting a taste of what's to come. Everybody's doing something different. Now, it is Dogman related, and then there's a couple of Bigfoot things that we're going to talk about there, but it is, for the most part, a Dogman conference with a little bit of other cryptid flavor thrown in there. But everybody's doing something different. And I'm not even I'm telling you, I'm not the guy to come see. You can see me, hear me talk anytime. But Ron, he's going to be bringing his A game, I know, because you come highly recommended. You do a great presentation, I've been told, by your peers.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I think you do a lot of good work.
Well, I thank you for that, my friend. I will tell you, whenever I attend these conferences, I'm a fanboy. Look, I see people like Ken Gearhart, and I see people like Nick Redfern, people like you. I admire you guys. There's so much. I see these guys on TV, and I really want to learn from them. What is so amazing about this conference is that you get so many speakers in a very short amount of time. It's not me up there talking for an hour and a half like a lot of conferences are. You're going to see somebody up there talking for 20 or 30 minutes, really highlighting a particular angle on the Dogman mythos, and we move right along. So at the end of the day, you are going to be so much better educated on this subject. I'm going to be better educated on this subject. I could not wait to hear some of these people talk up there. This is truly, I mean, and I do a lot of conferences, but this is one of those ones I get really excited about. Not only do we have a lot of speakers, we also don't have any competition. I've been involved with some conferences where they'll have 2 speakers on at a time, and you have to decide which room to go in. Linda Godfrey, whom you mentioned earlier, she and I were under this kind of conundrum a few years ago, and I really respect her work, and she respects mine as well. And we asked the organizers, could we simply go on together and give a joint talk? And they refused that because, they think that people, this whole idea of competition. But what we're going to see at the Dogman conference is we're going to see a lot of people that are very committed to this field. We're going to see a lot of people bring up a lot of different angles on this mystery, and we're all going to be on the same level playing field. One of the things that I really gather whenever I go to these kind of conferences is the interplay from the people attending the conference. I get a lot of information from them. I get a lot of stories. I really want to hear what people have to say. Actually, I probably want to hear more what you have to say than probably what they want to hear me talking about. So it's one of these things where there's going to be an interchange of ideas on so many different levels. And again, if I were not going to be speaking there, I would be there nonetheless.
Yeah. And what you just said too, like we're let me just be clear so everybody understands this conference is my conference. Everybody keeps saying Ken Gearhart, and I like Ken. He's a good friend of mine. He's been helping me with it, but this is my conference. It is PRT, and Ken has been gracious enough to help manage the situation. He kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the itinerary. This thing's not going to end at 6:00. Okay, that's not going to happen. I've already gotten tons of complaints. People saying, well, I'm not going to drive all the way from Wyoming, California, Maine, whatever, to go up here to this conference. People are coming from all over the country and even different parts of the world to go to this conference. Well, we're not ending it at 6:00. Okay, we're going to there's going to be a shakeup of that schedule that was put out. That should have just been like a rough draft. I was very busy, and I don't blame Ken. I kind of blame myself because I didn't get back with him and tell him exactly what I wanted. And so there is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be different. Okay, there's going to be a panel that's going to come on about 6:00, which ends the first round and then after that, anyone who's on the panel is welcome to stay and speak. That is how it's going to be, and we're predicting that it's going to go until 9:00. But I mean, Ken is of the opinion that people aren't going to want to stick around after 6:00, and I'm like, yeah, well, when you do a conference and you put all the big names at the very beginning in the morning, then there's nothing left. So, but I want everybody to be able to speak, and all these people were handpicked by me. I picked every one of these people to be to do this conference. I chose everybody that's going to be involved in this conference, and I want them all to be able to speak. And there's some, like Josh Anocchio, Bettina Moss, Elijah Henderson. There's a few other people, Kenny Irish, that aren't really interested in doing a singular presentation, so they're going to do their presentation on the panel. But you are somebody who I really wanted to do a presentation on. I think you're very intelligent, Ron, and I think you have you do a lot of good work from what I've been able to observe and research from, and I'm eager and I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about all this. But let me ask you a question. While we're on the subject of this, the Cahokia and all that, how plausible, though, is it that the theory that the Aztecs did come down from somewhere up in the north? And,
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because when you were talking about that earlier, I really wanted to jump in. I would tell you, from my point of view, from my research, I actually look at it as an opposite. I think that the Aztec moved northward rather than them moving down into Mesoamerica. It seems as if whenever the collapse of the Aztec Empire began, then there was a flourishing of these cultures in the America South and Southwest, where you see a lot of mimicking of what the Aztecs had. So that begins after you start seeing some problems with the Aztecs. For places like Cahokia, even though this is a great place for civilization. It's right along the Mississippi, a lot of good lands and everything like that. But it wasn't at the very inception of Cahokia that you see these great mounds, especially the Monk's Mound, the pyramid there. And I should point out that the pyramid, the Monk's Mound pyramid there, has a larger footprint, acreage-wise, than the Great Pyramid of Giza. So we're talking about a monumental structure there. There's also something there called a Woodhenge, which is very like Stonehenge in that it predicts the cycle of the sun. So there was advanced technology going on there, and it was a technology that could have easily been brought up from the Aztec culture. Now, the reason why I point out Cahokia so much is that what we see in a lot of the mounds there is sacrifices in the way that you would also see in the Aztec culture, beheadings, the loss of hands in certain accounts as well too, that would be buried in some of these truncated mounds. That seems to me that there was at least a band of Aztecs that came up out of this area whatever was going on, whether it was some sort of plague happening, some sort of tribal warfare, or the exhaustion of resources, natural resources in the area. But I think that they, at least in my opinion, that they took this knowledge and kind of disseminated as they worked their way northward. I can definitely see it very plausible that they worked their way south as well. I'm one of these people that also agree with you in thinking that America, the North American continent, was almost like this crossroads and a great highway of people coming from all angles. I do believe that people did come from Europe as well too, especially whenever the glacier was along the coast there. Studies have proven that you could take a boat and go down the coast just on the glacier, and you can hunt for seals and fish and what have you, and do pretty well until you come to right around the area of New Jersey. And what's interesting, in my home state of Pennsylvania, we have something here called Meadowcroft. It's a rock shelter, and there is evidence that suggests that there was human habitation there since about 32,000 BC, and that's record breaking. That's shattering. A professor, what is his name? I blanked, but he's from Mercyhurst College. He's been the one that has been leading a lot of the evidence finding on the archaeological digs. But there's some tremendous things coming out of that. Now, we have to point out that Pennsylvania is a very, very far away from the Bering Strait, but pretty close to the Atlantic Ocean, especially if you had an ice sheet coming in. So I do think that there was human migration from all sides, and I think that people probably knew about America being here well into antiquity, and I'm sure that you probably agree with that as well.
Yeah, because I take in the approach that we are a people, as the human race goes as a whole, we have amnesia, because I believe that the Egyptian culture is not really one of the most ancient cultures. I think it was one of the newer cultures from the last age. I think they were actually kind of toward the end of the last age, which the Hindus would call the Dwapara Yuga. I believe that's when they rose, and so they were kind of like at the cusp of that age, and it was one of the cultures that carried on into this age. And I think that what the Great Pyramids were, 2500 BC, something like that, 26.
About 3200 BC. Yes.
I guess the Great Pyramid. Let's go with that one. What year was that one made? I thought it was 3200. Okay, because I know it was anywhere from 4200 to 2600, and in various spots or whatever. But then after that. And the Sphinx is how old? But the Sphinx is said to have actually been a lot younger, isn't it, than the pyramids?
Well, there's claims now where the Sphinx might be, quite older than the pyramids. Some people are suggesting it goes back into the Ice Age. We're looking at 14,000 years ago.
Wow.
Which would be impressive if that was the case. But look, again, and I don't want this to be one of those shows where, I'm constantly agreeing with the host. But no, the Egyptian culture obviously didn't spring out of nothing. We know that there were step pyramids that were being built, and there were variations on the pyramids that were being built. But that knowledge comes from someplace. And the idea that you talk about amnesia, that is so right on the money for that, because there were things going on out there. Now, I will tell you this as well, too, especially whenever it comes to the Americas. A lot of what we know about America is based upon, for lack of better words, a bit of a colonial racism. We do not like to believe that there was a culture here that could do these kind of things, especially a culture that we subjugated under our own flag. There's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on here as well too. We don't want to admit that Africa was capable of doing a lot of amazing things, but when we get there from just an academic point of view, you can see places like Africa was doing incredible things. And I think that whenever you talk about lost cultures and lost kingdoms, I think that you have to look at Africa. But I am a staunch supporter that really does not support the out of Africa movement as much as I support the out of India movement.
Yeah. In India, because look at if you go to the Tamil culture, it predates the Sanskrit language. I mean, it's unreal. How far, and we can get into that. Now, here's what's weird. You have these species of animals that live in Eastern Africa. They're scattered amongst, I think, 20 different countries. And then, in particular, down in Madagascar. Africa is huge. People have no clue, just really how vast and how large it is. It is huge. I mean, that continent dwarfs everything else.
And to put it in perspective, America, the United States, that could fit into the Sahara Desert.
Yeah, it just in that one little small up at the top.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and so when you look at how vast and how large it is, and I personally think that the Mandela effect made it even bigger. I don't remember it being that big as a kid. I remember that it being smaller on the globe and looking different, but it is what it is. We are where we are. If you look at Africa and like Madagascar, which is humongous, Madagascar is like a little island compared to Africa, but it's gigantic. It's really a pretty big place. But there are lemurs that are found in India and in Madagascar and in Africa, and they all correspond with one another. They're slightly different, but their DNA is close enough to where they had a common ancestor. Now, people would say, okay, well, they were all close together at one time, that's why that happened. But there's no way. The splitting of that would have been millions and millions of years ago, and these lemurs would not have been around. So to me, there has to have been something that was there, and that is where I believe, and a lot of people say that the submerged continent of Lemuria was. And the Lemurians supposedly had, multiple arms and multiple legs and limbs, whatever. And you see Kali with the multiple, like Shiva. It always said that the gods, they have these multiple arms, multiple legs, and it's kind of weird because, not to get too far off, but go down the rabbit hole, but when Zeus overthrew Kronos, his dad, he actually enlisted the help of these multi-armed, multi-legged beings who had been oppressed by Kronos. And so it makes you wonder if the Genesis 6, and then of course the Book of Enoch, if it's all related and it actually corresponds to like there were giants in the earth in those days, and some of these, they had children, they were mighty men of renown,
Right.
Zeus,
Yep.
Thor. I mean, they could have all been real. Hercules. I mean, this could have really happened.
And I'm glad that you're bringing this up because, again, people might be listening and say, the average show, if I were on another program, people could say, this sounds like nonsense, but let's try to back this up a little bit. And it's easy to back this up, okay? So the archaeological record is now showing that we shared the earth with a multitude of other species, right? We had the Homo florensis, which was this kind of,
Little
hobbit-like
diminutive
character.
hobbits, yeah.
Right. So the world at one time, and we're not talking about in ancient antiquity, we're talking about maybe going back 20,000 years ago, okay? When we were anatomically human beings, we go back about 200,000 years if you would go with the traditional research. So in that time, in that legacy, in that cultural memory that we would have of being a human being, sharing this earth with little people and with giants and with Neanderthals and Denisovans. And we're only talking about what has already been categorized by archaeology, what is out there yet to be found. This world would have probably been as close to a Tolkien world as we could possibly imagine. It was probably like Lord of the Rings out there. When we see things that look very similar to us and possibly able to even communicate with them as well, too. Yet being far different than us. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really would impact us as a human race. And it also becomes the stuff of nightmares as well, too, if you think that there was any kind of, wars between them or what have you. It might sound fanciful, but we do know that we shared this earth with a multitude of other Homo sapiens. That just went down the dead end of the evolutionary chain, or we killed them off, or we bred them out of existence, or whatever. So we know that happened, and as you said as well too, the idea that we have these sacred books around the world that talk about pretty much the same thing, talking about the idea of angels or holy ones that have descended upon this earth, the idea of giants, the idea of different types of people being around. All this informs me that is, like you said, there's a hidden history that we have either been avoiding or refusing to accept.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. And what this has to do, though, folks, with what we were talking about, the mounds and Dogman and all that in North America, is that I believe, and I can't speak for you, Ron, but I think you've probably heard this before, that we all have a common beginning. And there are pyramids that are found all over the place. There's like these big pyramids in Croatia. I mean, they found them all over the place. They're everywhere. And then you have the big stone-structured pyramids in Egypt, obviously. But you have the ziggurats all over, South America, South America, Central America. And then you have all these mounds, pyramidal mounds that are all over North America. So, there was definitely something to this. There was some sort of, I think, a shared culture. We were all part of something bigger at one time, and everything kind of got fractured, and things kind of got moved around. And so, I tend to believe that there is something to this. Now, when you hear these stories of Mount Shasta, of these really tall beings that supposedly lived in Mount Shasta, you hear the stories of the Lemurians, and that supposedly the beings in Shasta were from Lemuria, and they just kind of ended up, because that whole place was destroyed. And then when you read the Vedas, and the Hindu culture, it talks about a great war that took place, and there is a place in the Indus Valley that is literally just like glass. It's green and brown glass, because the blast from that had to have been nuclear to create that, to make that was green grass become glass. And you hear about all these stories, you read all these different stories. And so when I think of ancient, I don't think of ancient as in like 5,000-10,000 years ago, like Göbekli Tepe, was it 10,000-11,000 years ago? I don't even look at that as ancient. I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of years of civilization that's been, we just have no idea. And it is very Tolkien-esque, because if you look at the way that he wrote those books, Tolkien, it was really like what he was talking about. To me, it was not just a metaphor, but it was almost like a history of early man and their struggles against the other races of man to get to the top, to get to where they had to be, because the Uruk-hai very much could have been like the Denisovians, or like you were talking about, or the Neanderthal. They could have been, and then these giant trolls, they could have been the Gigantopithecus. I mean, all these are offshoots thereof. There's all kinds of dead end offshoots. I mean, just go back in history and look at Allotherius. I mean, it was like, what is it, a reptile? What is it, a mammal? It's like there were all these in-between species that just kind of died off, and genetic dead ends. They just became kind of like, the cousins to what survived. But when you look at all these different races, like you said, the Florensis, those are like hobbits. It was almost like Tolkien, like he had some sort of like, I really like his work a lot. And, I've even liked the Silmarillion and all the different books, all of it. And he goes into the different ages, the first age, and then the second age, the third age. That makes sense, because the ages literally kind of coincide with the Hindu belief of like the Satya Yuga, the Tetra Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. What we're in right now is the hollowing, the age of destruction leading to basically emptiness, and many people believe as like Brahman, he's the god, but he's like, there are all these different gods, but they're always just aspects of one god. And there are people who actually believe this. I was talking to a guy who's a Christian the other day. I was at the dealership getting my vehicle worked on, whatever, and I was talking to this guy, and he works there. And he was talking about what's going to happen at the end of this age is that the Holy Spirit will leave the planet. It will, and then you're left here, and this is to be hell, at least for a while. So that's what some people believe, and it was just like, man, when you start going back and looking at some of this stuff, it's like, it's really weird. Like, it really makes sense, because like early man would have had to have contended with some really, really, not just big vicious predators and megafauna and whatever. They would have had to contend with many other species of hominin that could kill them very easily. And so, we have a fear of large reptiles. We have a fear of large hairy things, because that's what killed us and ate us in the darkness. And so I think that this is the word preternatural. Would that be the word to the fear?
Yep. Absolutely.
You would have a preternatural fear of like Dogman, because this is a wolf, like type creature that can kill you and eat you. Everybody knows that it's like, that's like the fear, it's like this giant bear or a dog or a wolf or whatever is going to come, is going to eat you, and it's going to kill one of your family members while you're sitting around the fire. Every time you killed something to eat it, you had to contend with the Stone Age hyenas and whatever else coming along. So we do have this fear of these giants, these creatures, these whatever they are, and then these dog type creatures, and if they're standing on hind legs and they have human level intelligence, that's even more terrifying. I mean, there's no way you can't be terrified. I mean, I was reading some bullcrap from one of these other hosts, and I was going like, talking about, oh, don't be afraid of them. How are you going to see an 8-foot tall thing on its hind legs with a giant wolf head and just go, oh, I'm not afraid? I'm glad that the therapist over there told me, don't be afraid. They're afraid of you as you are of them. In fact, I'm going to throw a rock at it and it'll just go away. I mean, that wouldn't have worked with the Amphitryon. That wouldn't have worked with any of these Stone Age, Pleistocene or Pliocene era creatures, and it's not going to work now. No, because I think these things are they could be the remnants of that. I mean, you're not going to go throw a rock. Oh, look, it's a Gigantopithecus. Let's see. Don't throw a rock at it and see if it goes away. If you throw a rock at a bison, it's going to gore you to death.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
People take a selfie, you know.
It happened like a month ago. You know?
That's right. But these are all valid points. The world is a very big place. The ice age that ended wasn't, I mean, in the geological record, it was like a blink of the eye. I mean, it was like yesterday. So there's nothing to say that there are still not remnant populations of these things still roaming around. And I think that, you know, and you really summed up the majority of my work in the field of the paranormal. I look at the idea of archetypes and the way these kind of creatures were formed and how they entered our culture and how they entered into our collective unconscious. And I think it does have to do with whenever we were all huddled around a fire and the world around us wanted to kill us. I really think that's where it began. So my research always and necessarily has to go back the earliest I can possibly go back, and that is a hunter-gatherer culture. But even though whenever I get to the hunter-gatherer culture, there's something that always tries to inform me that there was something even before that as well. And I think that that is kind of instinctual now. I think especially whenever it comes to historians that have an open mind, that what we know as history is just the scratching the surface of a far greater mystery. I really do believe that. And getting back to the idea of India as well, too. Think about this. Think about not only a shared language, which I firmly believe on, but we have a lot of words that have come out of the Indian language that you still see in languages around the world today. So it is as if there was a kind of, you know, one human language, one human belief system. And we talk about things like the golden rule and, you know, do unto others as we would have do unto them. And there's something to be said about the Indian culture as well, too, and their religious beliefs, because they have a great idea there. They have this, you know, built into their philosophy, which is ahimsa, the idea to do no harm, and that is earth-shaking. We are humans that are designed to fuel our brain with protein. You know, we are hunters, we are gatherers, we are problem solvers. We're also very violent. We're constantly struggling over land and over territory. We're even doing that to this very day, except spears have now been replaced by machine guns and warthogs, right? So, all that being said, are we also to suggest that we were able to come up with this idea of ahimsa and to do no harm and to love our enemies and turn the other cheek? See, that's the thing about this. Like, even that's a universal thing, but it's so against who we are. It doesn't make any sense to me that we came up with it. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me empirically that we came up with something like that. So I think there is more out there than simply meets the eye, and there's things out there. There are volumes that has never been written down in our history books that's just waiting to be written.
Or the Library of Alexandria had it.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
That was the worst right there. I mean, I scored some points with my professor when I was in school, and he asked what was the single most, excluding, he said religion, which would have been, you know, Muhammad and Christ and you know, Gautama and everything else. So you would just say, hey, what is the single most important event in history that was the most profound? And I said the burning of the Library of Alexandria. And he said, you know, who said that? And I said, yeah. And then I became a favorite. But I still didn't stay behind and beat the erasers and go be a hall monitor, because I'm not built like that. So I was going to read a couple of these from the listeners here. And one guy in particular, I think he's kind of a know-it-all. He's always in here. No offense to you, sir, Mr. Ken Gerhard. He says here, based on fossil evidence, Homo sapiens evolved about 300,000 years ago. There could have been many theoretical, he puts in quotations, lost civilizations since that time, but not before. Like I said, this guy, I don't know who he is, but he thinks he's smart, and he's kind of a know-it-all. Ken Gerhard, whatever. So anyways, Ken, if I remember correctly, I've talked to this guy a few times, and one of the things that Ken has said is that he is an aper when it comes to Bigfoot. But there is no fossil evidence of giant apes being in North America. Although we get reports of them all the time, and you believe that they are a physical creature, but yet we got no fossil evidence. So I don't really think it matters 300,000 years ago as a fossil. I think that, in my opinion, okay, you're going to have a hard, because like a lot of these fossils, like this here is a fossil. This comes 30 million years old, it's dated back. It's been polished, but it is a megalodon tooth, and it's not even one of the biggest. The biggest ones I have is as big as my hand. So this one is like in between a juvenile and an adult. And so when you look at this tooth, okay, this thing is like, it absolutely dwarfs like the great white shark tooth. This is a fossil. But it seems like it's easier to get fossils hundreds from millions of years, because they're buried further down, whereas things that are like 300,000 to 500,000 seem to be more closer to the surface, and they get destroyed a little easier. I've always thought that, and I've wondered that before. And I have a friend who's an archaeologist, his name's Bennett, and I've talked to him, and he says that in certain places, like they'll destroy, people, amateurs will destroy the first few levels of fossils before they get down to what they're, because they're right there. Because so I am a firm believer that the fossil record really doesn't tell us the whole story. Humans, as we know them, could have, now according to the theory, like with the Anunnaki, they could have come here and did what they did and then departed and just left like a very small contingency of humans, here, like, which would have been giants, of course, and then they created, like, they had like a lab, they terraformed, and they did all these other things. And I believe that they were our progenitors. I believe in God. I believe in Christ as a son. But here's the thing: I believe that He created them, and I think they created us. And so therefore, I believe that it could have gone back further than 300,000 years, because He's going by the Homo sapiens, whereas I believe that there was a huge mixing up of DNA. Because we have Neanderthal DNA in us, we have all kinds of, there's, there were Cro-Magnons, Neanderthals, Denisovians, like you said, all these different types of whatever, and they could have been seeded here. That is another theory. Now, typically an aper is not going to go along with that, but like I said, you can't have your cake and eat it too, Mr. Gerard, because, you're going to have no fossil evidence to support not only Gigantopithecus, but any large great ape within North America. Am I correct on that, Ron?
Oh, you're right. You are absolutely correct. But I will tell you, I will play the devil's advocate, and I will go over to Ken's side here for just a second. So even if we are going back 300,000 years, that's incredibly ancient, So if we could find evidence that there was some sort of idea of animal husbandry, or some idea of crop selection, or even some sort of settlement of any kind that dates back to 200,000 years ago, that would rewrite history books. Mm-hmm. Because what we're dealing with such a vast space between the time that we were starting to evolve as who we are as a species, and whenever we start building towns and cities, there's that great swath of time there. So I would be doing backflips if I could actually do a backflip. I would be doing backflips if we could discover something that would go back 200,000 years. That's good enough for me, my friend.
But you couldn't.
We can say that is an ancient civilization.
See, and you can't, because I mean, like, if I remember correctly, biodegradation, like it literally within 100 to 150,000 years, everything biodegrades. So you're not going to find anything 200,000. I mean, like, literally, everything in this room, it would just literally be decayed and dissolved back into the earth and turned into minerals and dust within that time period. Literally, like the entire city of New York would be like it never existed. In 100,000 years, you won't be able to see it. Because I was reading an article the other day about how supposedly men aren't going to exist after 100,000 years because our chromosomes are corrupting slowly or something, and so we're not going to exist. They're just going to be females, and men won't be around anymore. And so, well, that was what the article was saying. I think it was, I can't remember what magazine. I read all these, like Popular Science, Scientific American, Discover, and Mental Floss. I read all these science magazines because I'm like, I'm a junkie when it comes to that. And I love archaeology. That's another one. And military history. Those are my favorites. But I'll sit there and I'll read these articles and I'm going like, that's a crazy thing to think about. Like, in 100,000 years, I remember reading this one article that within 100 to 150, everything is gone. Like if we as human beings were wiped off the earth, and not just humans, but any intelligent life just didn't, because you could also take into account the cephalopods. They could come out of the ocean and be like, hey, we're in charge now, because they are highly, highly intelligent species. So just let's say that none of that ever happens. There's everything is just left the way it is. Within 150,000 years, everything is gone. There's not even a trace of anything. The only reason that we find fossils is because the right conditions take place, and they become carbonized. Or how do you say it? Help me out here, Ron. You know how when they sink into the earth, they become calcified, and they end up taking an event, and like this right here is basically like a rock. It's an entirely different compound than what this was millions of years ago. This is just the form of it, you know what I mean? Like this is the form of it, but this isn't what, the actual like keratin that was used for this tooth is long gone, and it turns it into this, but it keeps its shape. So people don't understand that. Like I'm not saying my audience is smart. They're not dummies, but just for the average person that's trying to keep up with that. Look, that's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. But everything we have, like this case right here, this phone, like the microphone, my glasses, everything. This gold will be here. The alloys with the gold and the gold will separate and become something different, and that will happen, and it's going to happen within 100. So when you look at like the fossil records, if you're going back to humans, let's say millions of years ago, let's say 4 million years ago, okay, because that was supposedly the yugas together are 4,230,000 years. We will not have any record whatsoever of the Satya Yuga or even the Tatra Yuga. Those beings that lived to be, 100,000 years and then 10,000 years, we would have no record of them at all. Nothing. Unless there is something that fell within that layer, but then that would go down into the layers where the millions and all that. So it's actually easier to find more preserved fossils in that layer. And I was looking at this, I was reading in Archaeology, it's just a magazine, it's called Archaeology, and I was reading that how so many amateurs will actually destroy like the top layers, going into the Pleistocene era and stuff, and then they get in, because they're trying to get down to where the cool stuff is, which, by the way, is not the Jurassic. I can't stand that Jurassic. They just the Cretaceous era is where a lot of those dinosaurs came from, but it doesn't sound as good. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Cretaceous Park doesn't sound as cool and as inviting as Jurassic Park. So, anyways, that's that's just a pet peeve of mine. But so here this Ken Gerhard says, Daniel Palmquist, there is fossil evidence of hominins going back 3 to 4 million years ago, but they did not have the brain capacity to form anything resembling a civilization. Yes, that is why we had Anunnaki Ken. Okay. So, anyways, this Ken guy, he's a real know-it-all. Ron, I don't know if you know this guy, but he's just real. I think he wrote a book or something, The Essential Guide to something.
Yeah, actually, I love Ken as a human being and as a researcher. He likes his Dr. Pepper. I do too. And this is the cool thing about this Dogman conference, because not only are we going to be talking about Dogman, but we also are going to be sitting there and people can come up to talk about whatever they want to talk about, which I'm excited about. Hey, if we go to 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I'll be there. If you want to bring up, we want to bring up, the idea of paleolinguistics or what have you. I mean, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this for so many different reasons. Not only to shed a little bit more light on the Dogman phenomenon, but also just to talk to people about whatever they want to talk about. Because I know you're open up for a good conversation, and I'm sure Ken will be too.
Yeah, and everybody knows if you disagree with my Abrahamic faiths that I will attack you. I will assault you, and because I'm amazing dumb. Because, I'm such an unreasonable guy. I'm like, no, shut up. The Bible makes me right. And I throw it at people. I tear the pages out and I throw them at people, In my mind, I see them disintegrating because of their sin, but that's not usually what happens. Usually I just deface a Bible, and then other people are angry because I did that.
That's right.
Yeah, and so no, seriously though, like what we were talking about, like I guess it was Daniel Palmquist who actually that Ken was responding to, and he said, didn't Japan have a documentary about humanoids from 3.7 million BC? Humanoids, and that could be a broad term. I mean, like you're looking at like whatever. But here, while I have you on here, Ron, let me ask you a question. What do you, the gorilla skull? What is your opinion on the gorilla? I say gorilla skull. I shouldn't have tempered it like that. Okay, the possible Bigfoot skull. What do you think of that?
Oh, well, I was excited because my kids watch YouTube all the time, and when Coyote Peterson, he's one of these people that I think that he's like an idiot to allow things to sting him and bite him, but he was also kind of intriguing as well. He seemed to be innocuous. He didn't seem to be one of those guys that was really seeking the spotlight. He seemed to be one of those guys that really was like, kind of trying to educate. And whenever I saw the program that he released on YouTube, and he kind of prefaced it by saying that this is a Bigfoot fantasy, he did a great disservice to everybody in this field. Benjamin Radford, from Skeptical Inquirer magazine said, the greatest threat Bigfoot researchers have is other Bigfoot researchers. Les Stroud, I think, did a great job on his series. At least he looked at it objectional. He was objectionable about it. I so wanted this finding to be authentic, and whenever I first saw it, I knew that it was one of those bone clones because I purchased things from them before, and I knew immediately upon seeing it that that's what it was, because it was kind of I think that might be a holotype actually of the Gigantopithecus. Oh no, it's not, because I think the only thing we have of a Gigantopithecus is part of a jawbone and some teeth. So this must have been, a sculpture of what it was imagined to be like. But I've seen this many, many times, and the morphology is unmistakable. But I was really taken aback that somebody like him would have done such a disservice to the field.
Yeah, and Barton was telling me yesterday. I was talking to him, and he was Barton Nunley. He was telling me that he thought he said something about it wasn't, like he said it wasn't real or something like that.
Yeah,
like he says it on there that it was, I don't know, and you could order it off of Etsy or something. It's some sort of. So
yeah, it's about $400, and you can get yourself your own Gigantopithecus skull.
Okay, so you're like me. The opinion is no bueno. It's not legit. There's nothing to it.
Not legit. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you know what, Ron, I appreciate it, and everybody, Ron is going to be at this conference. Ron Murphy, he has done a lot of great work. He's very, very well read, very, very researched, very studied. Glad to call him a friend, and he's going to be at our conference. I chose him specifically to go, and Mr. Gerhard that we were messing with earlier, that's Ken, said, I asked him about Ron, and he said Ron does a really good presentation and he's good at what he does, and I was like, then we're going to bring him on. And so anybody that wants to go to the conference, man, remember, you just go, like it's right there at the top of the link on the live chat, our conference tickets here, order conference tickets here, and you can get to see Ron speak in person. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to all these people under one roof. Never been done before.
That's right.
It's going to be crazy.
That's right. Everybody coming together. But hey, I got to thank you too before we get off here for considering me and also putting such a great lineup together. This had to be quite an endeavor, and I'm greatly indebted to you. And I cannot wait to finally meet you in person just about a month away.
Yeah, a month away. Yeah, literally 1 month away, because August 12th we'll be there together. So I'll see you, Ron. I'm going to run, and thank you for weighing in on everything and coming on the show. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure, my friend, and I was flattered to be here. Thanks a lot for asking me.
Yeah, I'll see you.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, folks, that's Ron. And so the question remains, we're still, somebody says oldest stone points in U.S. are the Clovis points. Yes, the Clovis people. Yeah, that is a very... I don't know who Mr. Gerhard thinks he is with all his knowledge and reading books and stuff. Thinks he's smart. Think you're smart because you can read. All right. Blue Cruise says Skulls Unlimited has a replica lowland gorilla skull that appears to me to be the same one found in British Columbia. By Kiter. Yeah, okay. So I don't know what he was doing with that. I don't know why Peterson did that. I just, when I first saw it, I just thought it wasn't real. I mean, I thought it was just BS. I thought this is BS too. This isn't even legit. I mean, You know what? I don't know what these people are doing, but I might just ask. Everybody keeps asking about that skull, and I'm just like, I just got to say, man, I just don't think it's real. I don't think it's legit. Let's call this guy up. Let's see what he says.
Hello.
Hello. Is this Mr. Gerard?
Possibly.
Okay.
May I ask who's calling?
This is Mr. Turner from Paranormal Round Table. Sounds like you got a phone ring in there.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Ken's at his train station job. This is his night job.
Hey, is this Josh?
Yes, this is Josh Turner from Paranormal Round Table. How you doing, Mr.
Wow, long time no talk, man. How you been?
Pretty good since this afternoon. Yeah, I've been doing okay. So
yeah, good.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You were weighing in on this, so I thought I'd hit you up and ask you because you're saying that that's not possible, that nothing beyond 300,000 years.
Well, to Ron's point, I mean, I think that's a lot of time for many civilizations to have come and gone. So, I mean, it's still a long friggin' time. So, I mean, it totally plays into your hypothetical about, different civilizations rising and falling and stuff over that time period. So, but I'd seen some of your in your chat room, some people had been commenting that, since the dinosaurs died out, there could have been many civilizations, and that was my only point: is there couldn't have been that many going back 65 million years.
Well, what about the Sleestaks? There's a documentary about them called Land Between the Lost or something. You've seen it, right?
What time period was that? Was that Cretaceous?
It would have been
back to in that?
I think it would have been because they had Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus Rex. So.
But they also had that little furry guy. What was his name? the little duende.
Yeah. What was So they were. Wouldn't mammals have been Chaka? Yes.
Chaka. So where does he fit into that whole scenario? That's curious.
He had just sprang up from a mouse. Because because I argued with somebody the other day. They said 60 million years ago there were mammals. I said yes, there was. They were just very diminutive.
Very good, Josh.
Very small,
yes.
Diminutive. Yeah.
200 million years, I think, mammals have been around. Most of them were like little possum things. But yep, for sure.
So let me ask you this. So I wanted to get your opinion because me and Ronald Murphy had just left off about the skull.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what is your thought on
been
that? This
been blowing up. Well, the first, I first heard about it from a phone call from our mutual friend Daniel Allen Jones, and he called me and said, "Hey, man, just give you a heads up. Someone found something like a primate skull in Canada, so this is like blowing up all the Bigfoot, threads." So I was like, "Okay, well that sounds pretty cool." And then I got online, and as soon as I saw the picture, like most people that have studied Bigfoot and primatology and anthropology and stuff, you can say, well, that looks like a gorilla skull, first impression. It's got a lot of prognathism. In other words, the jaw is protruding very far forward. And we all know that Bigfoot, based on thousands of accounts and eyewitness descriptions, has a relatively flat face, relatively speaking. There might be a little bit, but not to that extent. And there was the pronounced sagittal crest, which has been sometimes associated with Bigfoot, but it seemed like it was probably a gorilla skull. And then, of course, throughout the Bigfoot forums, people began other I didn't even have to do any work. I just waited for the other younger investigators to get on the case. And sure enough, they did. They were able to match that skull that was being dug up to different gorilla skull replicas that were available online, including little small holes that may have been like for mounting the skull onto a stand or things like that. So, the proof is in the pudding. But to your point earlier, I think here are the things that are significant about this. One is that this, even though apparently this guy, Coyote Peterson, was that his name? I think he's a legit naturalist. He did apparently mention in the video when he's digging up the skull that this is just a hypothetical, what if
that's what I thought.
A Bigfoot skull.
I was like, why
so
is this?
He did say that, but people, they don't have, they have a very short attention span, and a lot of people don't have an eye for detail. So this is going to become, inexplicably, this incident is going to be brought up again and again for years and decades in the Bigfoot community. Well, remember that guy broke that skull in Canada? It's going to be like, well, that was a hoax. But
and that's all they're going to read is the headline.
Yeah, they don't. Exactly, Josh. People tend to read the headlines, but they don't dig in and find out the whole truth. So, but I also have an answer as to why this guy did this, and I don't know anything about him. He seems to be a legit wildlife researcher and naturalist, and the answer is money. Cha-ching, because Bigfoot, and I've learned this from my involvement in the Bigfoot field for decades, is a cash cow. The name Bigfoot, anything having to do with Bigfoot is gold. And I appear at Bigfoot conferences where thousands of people, and you can find Bigfoot on everything from T-shirts to coffee mugs to bumper stickers to keychains to jewelry, you name it, and people are going to slap Bigfoot on it. And so I don't really fault this guy for seeing that, anything associated with Bigfoot was, going to be clickbait for his channel or, help his public profile, which obviously it has. And maybe it doesn't reflect on him very well because it seems a little, mischievous what he did. But a
little misleading, but about his,
Yeah. So, but this also plays into, you had a great point earlier when you said, Mr. Gerhard or whoever that guy was that was commenting, that know-it-all guy. You're right. There is no fossil evidence of any hominins in North America. And as a skeptic, which I think all good investigators should be skeptics too, to some degree, that is a great argument as to why Bigfoot is not an ape and cannot exist in North America. And I fully acknowledge that as a skeptical argument, that's very strong, and it's a problem. It's a red herring for Bigfoot researchers and particularly apers like myself.
But it doesn't change the fact that people still see these things by the thousands, and just like they see Dogman, just like they see chupacabras, like they see all these other creatures. You get all these reports, and where there's smoke, there's fire. Something is there. They're seeing. I keep seeing Shaka. They're seeing Shaka's parents running around. But
Shaka the possum.
But it's like, what are these? Well, I think the other day we came up with a new one. What was it? The Kamal County Jackal Man.
Yeah, Jackal Man.
Jackal-headed guy. But so there's all these different creatures running around. These people are seeing something. It's not all just a bunch of, but the fossil records don't bear it out. That's the problem. But
Yeah, that is a big void, but you're right. There's a lot of evidence. There's a mountain of evidence for Bigfoot if you look at the thousands of eyewitness sightings that are very consistent, the Native American traditions which span across the Americas, the physical trace evidence, which is primarily the foot casts and footprints that have been found and documented, the Patterson-Gimlin film. And in my mind, I'm 90% convinced that Bigfoot exists. But the 10% of me that's still skeptical falls back on arguments like you made, which is, well, how come we don't have any fossils or haven't found any fossils yet of these things? It doesn't mean they're not out there somewhere. So.
No. Somebody had said something about, and I think I know what they're talking about. They were talking to my brother, and they said, what about the fossilized tracks beside human tracks? What do you think of that? Like dinosaur tracks next to humanoidal footprints.
The Paluxy tracks? The ones up in
that
Glenrose?
would be one. I mean, but I've heard of others. I don't know that I've seen others, but I've heard that there have been.
Yeah, I haven't studied those a lot, but the paleontologists that I've heard talking about them seem to think that those are basically dinosaur tracks that have just morphed into a humanoid type of shape, over time or based on the way they were laid in the ground and so forth. And that is just an interpretation issue. But there is an interesting find that happened, if you didn't catch this, Josh, in White Sands in New Mexico recently. They had found evidence of other megafauna animals from the Pleistocene, like giant sloths and things, but they recently found human footprints in there too. And that layer of sediment is like 50,000 years old. So some of your chat people were talking about the Clovis. That has been the long-standing tradition, is like, okay, humans have been in the Americas for 12,000 years. Well, now we have pretty solid evidence that they've been here in this continent for at least 50,000 years. So we've now pushed that timeline back like 4 times. So it could even be longer than that.
If you look at the Algonquin and the Delaware and the Mohawk peoples of the Northeast and the Iroquois, the Huron, there were a lot of them who had lighter skin, and then the further you went into the interior, they got darker. And I think that they could have encountered, Northern Europeans, in particular the Vikings. I mean, it's very possible, and because a lot of them had legends and stories of these, reddish blonde-haired men that came and they traded with them, and they actually produced offspring. Yep. They found a Chinese anchor, I believe, in the Yucatan that was. I just read this the other day. I think it was 6,800 years old, and it was a Chinese anchor. That's.
I think there are some in the ocean off the coast of California, too. I think they found ancient Chinese anchors in the ocean there. So you're right. There have been waves of people coming to the Americas for thousands of years from all over the continent. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's really, and then they're just the Polynesians. They're the genetically, a lot of the natives correspond to Polynesian. It's really weird. I mean, if you look at, I think there were multiple migrations that came from both sides and kind of to where we're at now. But yeah. So let me switch. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is great. We're talking about this, and I know your listeners have a wide variety of interests. We're all like-minded people in that we're very curious. Everyone that's listening to your show is a very curious person. And the great thing about all of this is that it whenever we talk about any of this stuff, it underscores the fact that there's a lot of stuff we just don't know, period. And we're still learning and trying to figure it out. And so maybe that'll be a nice segue into what you were going to talk about next. But
I wanted to say something. Last Starfighter in East LA says Comal County is seriously a cursed land. No joking about that area is truly cursed. Yeah, I have heard that many times because of all the Dogman and Bigfoot reports that I get out of that area. I get a lot of weird stuff out of that area. So yeah, what I was gonna say though is you were actually going to be on Coast to Coast on Thursday? Yes,
this Thursday night. Or some could characterize it as early Friday morning, because I don't go on until midnight Pacific time. So it'll be, it's late. But Thursday night I'll be on Coast to Coast for a couple of hours. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you'll be coming on at 2 a.m. our time?
Correct. 2 a.m. Central.
Yeah, it's a long show though. It goes to 4 in the morning, right, or something.
Well, I'll be on for 2 hours. I don't know if they're going to have me on for the last 2 hours or I've been on Coast to Coast a few times, and I actually enjoy the last hour the most because that's when they have the callers. And I don't really have to do much talking, but it's fun because people call in with their own stories. Kind of like your show. They call in with their own stories and encounters, and you just never know where it's going to go. But
that's questions for the know-it-all, Mr. Gerard. You think you know everything about gorillas. I'm just kidding. So anyways, Ken, you're going to be at the conference.
I am.
Yeah,
I am. I am.
Obviously, you're one of the people who's helped me put this together, and it's going to be interesting.
It's been an honor.
Yeah, it's been an honor working with you, and it's been a lot of stress for both of us. But it's going to happen though, and like I said, we're going to have all these big name people under one roof. The conference, folks, the tickets, you can still get them. Ken's going to be there. He's going to be emceeing, and I think you're going to DJ a little bit too, aren't you? Going to be DJing?
Yeah, I'll spin some tracks.
You going to some you going to drop some hot tracks for us? All right, cool.
Yeah. Hungry Like the Wolf is one that I always like to.
I think there's one called Night Calls. That's a pretty good one too.
Good classic dance, some Rob Zombie. No, seriously, I'm excited about the conference, and for the same reasons that Ron was kind of pointing out, is that you've assembled a pretty impressive group of minds, investigators with a wide variety of knowledge and different areas of research. Ron was a perfect example. He's, talking about some of the Native American stuff. I know David Weatherly is, he's lived with the Navajo people, and he's going to talk about skinwalkers. So we're going to get a little bit of that. We're going to have some modern, obviously you've got a lot of representation of modern researchers like yourself, the NADP, and, all those guys are going to be talking about, modern sightings and what's going on recently. And then, Nick Redfern is going to talk about the Defiance werewolf case, which is it's the 50th anniversary. So that's one of the first possible Dogman encounters that happened in the early 70s that people don't really talk about. So I think you're going to have a good variety of different topics and just a wide range of information that anyone that's interested in Dogman and other cryptids is going to be able to kind of amass quite a bit of knowledge, and maybe that'll help us form some opinions.
Yeah. So Ken, I'm gonna let you go. Good. Thanks for coming on the show and talking, and good luck on Coast to Coast Thursday, folks. Check him out on Coast to Coast on Thursday. Ken Gerhard.
Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right, Ken. I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye. So, folks, that was Mr. Gerard that I was teasing about earlier. That was actually Ken Gerhard. And he also works at the zoo, folks. So you go to San Antonio and you're in the San Antonio area or whatever, and he's at the zoo, and I can usually find out where he's at the zoo or not, so go check him out. He loves animals. He loves what he does. He's a cryptozoologist and basically a zoologist. I mean, he knows his stuff. So, folks, that's going to be on the 12th and 13th that we're going to be doing the conference. Remember, if you're VIP, we are about to sell a handful more of the VIP tickets. That, I think, is going to go on sale tomorrow, because we've had several people who dropped off of the VIP. They're like, I can't go. So we're going to sell some more of the VIP. We're going to open up a little bit of the VIP. What you can do if you've already bought, it's just going to be first come, first serve. I'm telling you right now, if you've already bought a regular ticket and you're just looking to upgrade, then you can buy the VIP ticket and show me proof that you have both, and then we can do some sort of reimbursement thing there. But we are going to do that. So I had Nick Valente, and I can't remember, Jody. There were several other people who mentioned to me that they needed a few more VIP, and I didn't feel right about just saying, okay, I'm going to give your people VIP, because then I have to do that for everyone, because there's some people who missed out because VIP sold out within hours. Okay. So what I wanted to do about the VIP is that if you want a VIP ticket, we are going to sell. We're going to cut, I think, 15 or so out of the general admission and put them onto the VIP, so that we can sell a few more VIP tickets to help some people out that are really wanting to buy the VIP. It's going to go quick. Okay, so like we're going to drop that probably tomorrow in the afternoon. It'll be on there, and then, like I said, if you're one of those people, then you better do it fast. Okay, and I'm doing this because I just had so many people, talking to me about it or whatever, and we didn't. I'm telling you right now, if you're listening, the conference isn't just going to be until 6 in the afternoon. It's going to go till 9, at least. So, people driving all this way, they're like, oh, I want to be able to drive and talk and hang out. I'm going to hang out all night. I don't care. But that's pretty much, that's my thing. You always enjoy listening to Kenny G. So what was I going to say? Oh, so the story that I told about the mall, because this thing with my elbow just kind of jacked everything up. I will get to that next week, and I will have a different guest on next week, and I'm also going to bring on another person to talk briefly that's going to be at the conference. So we're going to do this again next week, folks. But I am actually in pain. I'm not kidding, man. My elbow is like, it is. I'm doing a good job of hiding it. Let's put it that way. Yes, and actually, Ben, I was going to have J.C. Johnson, one of his understudies, was going to come on tonight, but I ended up putting Ron on, and then that person hopefully should come on next week. Now, here's one thing I'm going to tell you. I was going to have a very controversial guest come on last Tuesday, but he couldn't come on this Tuesday because now he's being told not to do podcasts or any more shows until whatever he's got going on happens. So I wasn't able to bring him on and do what I wanted to do. That would have been last week. Ron was this week, and then next week we got another person. But hopefully we'll get him on. But I don't know. I really don't know. I really want him to come to the conference, and we'll see. I don't know. I did get confirmation that... I was talking to Josh Nanokia from What Lurks Beneath. We are going to do a collaboration real soon, me and him. And so be looking for that. We're going to do a crossover. Ben says, you knew him, Josh? Who are you referring to? Anyways, folks, I have to go. I am out. I will catch y'all on the flip side.